Okay, let's call this, we are
Mr. Boyd.
actually, we got a full house here tonight, everybody, so let's just keep things civil.
But it's just me and Carl.
So the meeting has already been called to order. We called it to order to go into executive session about an hour and change ago. So we're going to go right into agenda changes and conflicts.
And Mayor, for the record, we took roll as well.
We did take roll and we are all here.
Okay.
Is there, Shelley, any agenda changes or conflicts of interest?
No conflicts of interest. I do have 3 agenda changes, just 3 items to pull off of the consent agenda, actually 2 to pull off. I have 1 request on item G. We're not going to pull that off the consent agenda. We'll go ahead and approve that grant, but if we could get a presentation at a future meeting, just when it's timely, no rush, but on the phase 2 Sarah Park upgrades. And then if we could pull consent agenda items I and J for the landfill fees. Just to add some wording and for the traffic incident management plan, just to talk about that more.
No, I think to just a future meeting and staff will slot those in where they fit best. The resolution will probably come back next meeting. And the Tim's plan sometime in January.
Yeah, the Tim's plan, I think too, that's just a big deal. When I started reading it and digging into it, I'd like the public to know about it. And I'd like to also have a good council discussion about, and with staff, like, what are those next steps? Who's in charge? Who's doing what? And how do we get that done? Thanks.
So is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the consent agenda with items
I and J pulled off.
I and J pulled off to continue to a future meeting, non-determined, and to get a presentation for item G at some point, but not to be approved in this meeting.
Point
Yes.
of order.
Yes, sir.
You skipped item 7, just so you went from 6 to 8,
Oh, thank you.
just in case.
I
Yes.
We're talking about agenda changes.
No, but you just approved it.
hold on. There's
That
what?
was gonna change to the agenda.
Yeah.
Just change the consent, but you also just made a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I did not make that motion.
To the change.
Okay,
You-
fine.
You kind of added it in. Let's just stick to the change right now and then go to your public.
And here we thought this gonna be smooth.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Giving you your workout tonight, aren't we? All right, we will go back because I did forget item number 7. This is citizens appearing before council for items not appearing on the agenda. Does anybody in the crowd or online like to comment on an item not on the agenda? Okay,
Nobody online?
seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to our regular agenda items and actions. This is number 9, ordinance 2022-29.
Again, Mr. Mayor, point of order.
It's number 8. You now need to approve the consent agenda.
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And I'll second that.
Minus items. I-
Minus, of course, items I and J, which Madam Kaup has, or yes, has continued. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hershey.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Council.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now,
We'll go to item number 9. Thank you, everybody. This is appropriating funds for the 2023 budget. This is the first reading, 2022-29. Hello, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Steve Boyd. I'm lame duck acting city manager.
We hope.
2 weeks ago, you passed a budget for 2023 unanimously. Thank you. This is appropriating the money so that the city manager has the legal authority to tell Yvette to pay bills.
Yes, Charlie.
I move for approval ordinance 22-29 on first and only reading.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Do we need to do public comments since
Yeah,
it's an ordinance?
yeah.
Does anybody from the public prior to that motion want to speak on this? Anybody online or in the audience? Seeing none, I will bring it back for a motion that's already been made.
That's correct.
Let's
Call for the question.
call the question.
is it a voice?
Sorry.
I make a motion to replace Ryan's
The motion was approved unanimously.
All
Thank you,
right.
Council.
Great presentation, Steve. Number 10, ordinance 2022-31 landscape standards. This was continued. This is to be continued to our next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I move to continue ordinance 2022-31.
I'll
to the
second.
next meeting.
It's been motioned by Counselor Dem, seconded by Counselor Cop. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. More dramatic. Item number 11. Counselor Willman, Colorado Municipal League Policy Update.
Thanks.
Charlie.
I wanted to bring to everyone's attention a draft bill. I sent it out, email about a week ago, then I asked it to be put on the agenda. I'm going to attend tomorrow by Zoom, a CML Policy Committee meeting. This was just added to that meeting. I suspected it was going to be, it got added today. Basically, if you review the bill, what it's doing is giving municipalities as one of the housing options you have, a first option to purchase an apartment building. And I'm on the housing subcommittee with CML, and we had a significant discussion about this issue. Because I have personal concerns about it. I guess I'll put it that way. I think one, I'm not sure it's constitutional. Number two, I think it really invades private enterprise. And I guess I just don't think we ought to be supporting this. I don't want to vote that way in the policy committee meeting if the council thinks otherwise, but that's my personal view.
Can you pressure, can you?
Charlie, is this was it the concept along the line of the things going on with mobile home parks? Is that how this kind of came about? Is the concept along the line of mobile home parks getting first right to buy their mobile home park?
But that's the residents have the right with the mobile home section.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
not-
just wondering if that
it's
was
not a
something similar.
municipality.
Oh, okay, got it.
And what this does, it says the municipality, if you're gonna sell an apartment building, you gotta look at the municipality, and it's not just municipality, it's any of a number of local entities, governmental entities, school district, could be metro district.
Library district?
Huh?
Library district?
Library district, anything like that. They could do it, they could put this in, and they have, after they get the notice, I think it's 21 days or 20 days to determine if they want to exercise the option, and then they have 90 days to actually exercise the option. And I just, to me, it really is interfering in private enterprises at a level that I don't think is appropriate. I think the concept is great. Providing the housing for the people is great, but if they want to give that right to the tenants of the building, I wouldn't have as much problem with it there because they have an interest in it, although there are lots of problems with condominiumization, things that we've talked about and other things. This is an overreach. I can't, and I probably would go as far as overreach as many people, but not this one. I'd like to vote against it, but I don't want to do that without the council's permission to vote against it.
Is there any other questions or a motion?
I have a question for him. You say you don't want to vote against it, and I understand that you're a voting member on CML on our behalf, but how often do you vote on things you don't bring to us? Is this, I mean,
I voted during
like,
this
why
time
did you bring this one?
because I thought it was, usually it's very few things affect us, I think, directly.
Mhm.
I think this one affects us more directly from
Sure,
our apartment owners and things like that.
yeah,
We have started this time of year, we always have a policy committee meeting. It's on a Friday. Next Friday, the CML board will meet. I'm a member of the policy committee
Mhm.
from the
Yeah.
city. I'm appointed from the city in the policy committee. I'm also on the board. So I'll vote on this actually on 2 different occasions.
okay,
And, you know, I don't always get this stuff ahead of time. And frankly, when I do, I forget to send it out. And I'll try to be more consistent with getting
Thank you.
that stuff out. So
yeah,
that you could look at it, so you see something else. This was, normally it's just, they don't really have a lot of impact on the local, our
Mhm.
local government. If they do, I usually reach out, like there's some of the police, I reach out to the chief, the
Mhm.
fire department. Send some stuff to the municipal judge occasionally, say, here's the stuff, what's your view?
Mhm.
And things like that. But
Yeah.
typically, they're very good things directly relate to our operation as a city.
yeah. Well, I truly appreciate that you brought this to us because if nothing else, it also helps inform us. So we know what's out there and what is, you know,
And I should probably get out ahead of time. You can give me other advice. And what I'll do is after this meeting tomorrow, I'll get it out because if you have comments that you want me to talk
Mm-hmm.
about next week at the CML board meeting, which is really when the positions are
Mhm.
finalized, let me know.
Well, and I'm gonna support your vote to not support this. And my rationale behind it too is that I think that anytime you add yet another variable in the market conditions of scarcity and you have an additional buyer, it can drive up pricing. And I think that for the best interest of a fair market and affordable housing is to not have yet another component.
thought.
So thank you.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to support Charlie not supporting this.
Been moved by Counselor Wusso, seconded by Counselor Dem. Just real quick, I want to mention something like, how do you know, and it just kind of strikes me, how do you bring back stuff? Organizations I'm in would be CAST or RAFTA. If there's something that I know aligns with our strategic plan or comp plan, or we have taken a vote on something, even if it's a vote adjacent, I'll usually feel empowered to take that because I know we have spoken to that issue. If there's something that's, and I brought some things back before that if we just never contemplated it, then I usually ask for, like Councilor Wilman's doing, permission from this body to weigh in on that. So that's how I do it as well. And I think
But just for informational, I have no problem. I should have been a better course. I never thought about it right then. But the better course, I'll try to send this stuff out. Typically, after the meetings, this is what's going on. I think I sent out these kind of summaries of bills in the past, but it's usually after the meetings, not before.
Thank you.
so. We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Sorry, Amy.
Amy?
Thank you. Amy is the grassroots TV person.
Oh, okay. Okay, next item is MOU for Roaring Fork Regional Bike Share.
Excuse me.
Good evening, council. I'd like to bring over Dan Blankenship and Myrta from WeCycle because they're going to help me with the presentation. As an introduction, we have been working on this in the Transportation Commission, and the Transportation Commission has had some reluctance to adopt the MOU and to participate in the WeCycle program. Their arguments were that our city infrastructure isn't really good enough currently with the amount of the bikes that we have and the infrastructure that we have. They really felt like it should be upgraded before we adopted WeCycle and moved forward with it. They recently revised that position and agreed that WeCycle should move forward. But they also had a series of other things that they really wanted to have happen in concurrence with the bicycle program. The most important being correction of some of those infrastructure issues. Their memo is attached to the WeCycle adoption memo. I have tried to summarize the WeCycle MOU for you there. Dan did say that he wanted to correct some of the things in my memo about the delivery of the timeline of delivery, particularly related to some of the supply chain issues that we're experiencing nationwide. So with that, I will allow Dan to speak. If we can bring him up.
Can you hear us, Dan?
Hi,
There we
I
are.
can
Can
hear
you
you.
hear us, Dan?
I can hear you, and I'm trying to get my camera working.
But we cannot hear you.
I have so many
Dan,
things
we
on my
can't hear
desk.
you yet.
You can't hear me. How about this?
Hey, Dan? Dan, we
Yes?
cannot hear you.
Okay.
It looks like your microphone's on. Maybe you need to turn it up.
I'm not sure I have the capability of doing that. Is there a dial-in number possibly, or?
I guess you don't get to correct Terry.
That's how that works. Don't ever try that again.
I don't know why you can't hear me.
So what was Dan's correction?
No,
Terry?
so,
Or Carl?
I just got a text that they can hear Dan out there in Zoom land. We just can't hear him here.
All right. I can try and summarize some of Dan's corrections here. Let me make sure that I.
It makes me feel like it's the speakers in the room that are playing.
Right.
So hang on a sec.
Okay.
So then you can hear us. Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. Okay. Yeah, all right. Gotcha. So we just can't hear you. So we're going to spend like maybe a couple of minutes trying to get you online so we can hear from you because, you know,
Yeah.
Terry's
And
going to mangle
it's
all.
in our, it's here in our room, Dan, not you.
Okay,
Dan did give me red lines. I think I can do it, but
Can she just say what he was saying? Jonathan. My mom's $100,000. Jonathan, did you say?
We are
If you were top, it's 100. Shelley.
a half hour ahead. So we have 29 minutes to resolve this and still be on time.
Just do like council conference right now and just keep the momentum.
I think that,
I
can I
think we
make
should
a
stand
comment?
here.
Steve, can I make a comment?
I'll start.
The lights out here, I know they work really hard. They look really nice again this year, right out here.
That's the thing.
Or if that's Matt, thank you. The lights.
County.
I thought I saw city employees working on the lights.
Yeah.
I did. They had city vests on.
Hey. So Terry, just as a point of information, if there's ever a opportunity for a transportation commission or somebody that wants to come up and speak on that behalf, if they're able to, you know, we're more than happy to hear their varying opinions.
Yeah.
Not that we don't love.
Yeah. And they sent a memo.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which is.
I know, sometimes it's nice that they present, you know, especially if it conflicts a little bit. It's not exactly like.
I think somebody else out there in TV land. Yeah, I don't have a phone number for Dan.
I do.
I do.
I have Dan's cell.
Yeah, because it's, so I got a text that everybody in the bigger world can hear him. We can't hear him in this room.
Can I call him Mr. Oh, that's his office.
Hi,
Maybe
this
he'll
is
pick up.
Hannah. I'm out in Zoom land. Dan can hear you.
oh, Jonathan called me on my phone. I've got Tony calling me on my other one.
So can he just talk? Because this is his office phone.
Maybe bring him more, get people over there here.
Yeah, I did.
Hear me on this phone?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Ingrid, you good?
It's a little bit like being on the run.
Everybody else?
There we go.
We're good.
All right, talk to us.
Okay. Well, I'm hearing a little bit of feedback here. Let me just turn off my. I can't turn off my volume.
Is that better?
Is that better? I turned off my mic.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Go to public hearing.
Well, to address the issue that I'm hearing this feedback.
I see.
I'm gonna try to see. I can set my volume on. All right. Then if somebody wants to talk, I will have to turn my volume back on. But I can't talk while there's a lag of about 2 seconds after everything I say. What Terry was talking about is in her memo. I think, as I read it, it indicated that the MOU, which is from 2023 through 2028, included 3 phases: the first phase, the second phase, and the third phase. And really, the MOU is really intended to address the first phase that we consider to be inside the Destination 2040 plan funding that's available. There are 2 additional phases that are kind of optional. that were slated for 26 and I think 27 or 28. And while we could include those in the MOU, because each year intent is to sit down with the jurisdictional partners and develop a scope of work for the subsequent year and a budget for it. And if the city wanted to move forward with expanding the bike share program, subsequently according to the plan, we could do that, but we haven't identified funding for it. And I just wanted to clarify that by signing the MOU, RAPTA is not committing to do those other two phases with the funding that it has available, which is kind of constrained by what was available in the Destination 2040 plan.
So I think in summary, what Dan's trying to say is that the agreement would be structured a lot like the Ride Glenwood Springs agreement. That we would essentially go year to year. They would propose, an annual cost, and we would agree to that annual cost. And in 2023, the planning cost is all of RAPTA's. So I think during 2023, we'll have a lot of opportunity to discuss the first phase as well as the final two phases, and decide whether the city wants to keep moving forward. But we are going to go through a planning process this next year. Is that correct, Dan? Did you hear any of that? Oh, you can.
That's correct.
Good. Thumbs up. Confirmation from the moon.
Well, that's what he said.
So I think, from the Transportation Commission standpoint, I think that they agree that this is a good way forward. It is important to our transportation demand management efforts to move forward with these kinds of small things to try to get people out of their cars. So I think from the Transportation Commission and from engineering, we believe that it's a good idea to move forward with the MOU. And I do think, we'll be bringing it back to the council every year to talk about the next phase and where we would go from here.
Real quick, we have a member of the Transportation Commission.
Steve here.
Steve, would you like to say a few words? And if you do, you need to come up here to the microphone.
Glad to do it in whatever timing and format you like. I intended to come as a citizen, but I'm not sure I can presume to speak for the Transportation Commission, although what I have to say is kind of similar. Steve Smith, I live in Glenwood Springs, and to keep it clean, I'll be here in behalf of Glenwood Springs bicycle advocates. We too think this is a marvelous addition to the bicycling network that Glenwood Springs can have and can continue to celebrate and put to good use. Our caveats are in kind of the two realms of any infrastructure project, capital and maintenance. We just urge you to be careful and be selective about how the city's share of this new bicycle project is funded, and that it's done in a way that does not compromise continuing investment in the bicycling infrastructure in general, and does not compromise good maintenance of your existing infrastructure, bicycle lanes, crosswalks, bridges, snow clearing, and such. This is going to be a great amendment and accentuation of bicycling here, which in a town that enjoys a marvelous existing infrastructure for safe and convenient and attractive bicycling. There are a few major safety gaps, and the city is actively working on three of those right now. So we're going to have just a premier network that will serve all bicyclists, including those on a shared bike. And then once that's in place, continuing to keep it tip-top shape will be very important. So we do support this addition, as long as this is viewed as an addition and not a substitute for any other good bicycle care. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Questions for staff or Dr. Blankenship? Doctor. He's so esteemed. I just gave him a doctor title. Mr. Blankenship, Director Blankenship. Go ahead, Shelley, then Charlie.
Terry.
Then Paul.
Yes, as I understand it, and Dan also, whoever can answer it, it looks like, so for 2023, it's a pure planning phase and RAFTA is paying for 100% of those costs. So no cost to Glenwood Springs, but we would be participating in that planning. And then for 2024, we might be looking at infrastructure costs. But we don't, but those again, RAFTA is carrying, I believe, the bulk of those costs, if I understand that. We don't know exactly what they will be yet. And again, that would be up to approval of this council to go forward in 20, if we wanted to.
Well, and I think that that is one of the areas that Dan wanted to make sure that there was a correction. You know, there are supply chain issues with the capital infrastructure. And so
Right.
I think that that was one of the places that he wanted to create a little bit more flexibility and make sure that that there wasn't an assumption that we would get something in 2024.
So
I
it
think
might
we're
not be till 2025. because of
more
that.
likely be in 2025. And
Okay.
in
Okay.
terms of the overall costs, you know, I think what we need to really pay attention to is that chart A in the memo.
Right.
You know, there are the places where the city is responsible are for local direct operation costs funded by jurisdiction. So we're responsible at 100% of those. And then in the capital expenses, we're responsible for the bike share equipment, for the bike share replacement and maintenance equipment at a level of 20%. RAFTA is
20%, okay.
covering 80% of those costs.
Okay.
And I think that that's, you know, as we move forward, and I do, you're correct, it will move forward each year and we'll approve the next phase of it. But I think that
On a
that's gonna-
yearly basis.
yeah,
Okay.
and,
Okay.
but this chart is gonna guide our investment for the next year.
So I think part of the question that council has and that I have is where do those funds come from if we decide to move forward? And my question to you would be is that, would that be appropriate to have that come out of the Ride Glenwood funding as part of our first last mile funding?
You know, I think so. That's where I would propose it. I think, you know, we are doing a transit expansion study right now. And as
Right.
part of that transit expansion study, we'll be looking at micro transit options. You know, the WeCycle is not specifically mentioned in that, but I do think it's something that as we consider potential funding for those micro transit options, we should try to include things like this in that, you know, if there are, you know, if there's ever another proposed tax measure to support an expanded system, if there are other funding mechanisms that we use that would support, you know, those micro transit or an expansion of our fixed transit system, I think we should try to start rolling those things together and thinking of them broadly. So
Okay.
that's what I would ask for, but
Okay.
not yet, not today.
All right. Thank you.
Charlie.
So when you and Dan were talking earlier about we're only committing to the first phase, I'm looking at chart C, which shows us spending $400,000, $245,000, $253,000, and $276,000. Those would still be there even if we only go with that first phase. Is that correct?
I think what Dan wanted to emphasize is that really we're going to go year to year on this thing. They're trying to give us an estimation of what those costs could be in the following years, but we're not committing to those costs.
So let me interrupt you. I understand we're not committed because we always can vote against allocating money, but are those costs that I just quoted, are those only if we do that first phase, which I can't remember, the 15 stations or something like that? Those costs will be there, assuming we continue it on an annual basis
Yes, I would say that.
without increasing the number of stations.
Yes, you know, they have a schedule that they wanted to try to hold to. And yes, I'm looking for the number of stations in the first phase, but that's the cost that they anticipated. Again, estimated and anticipated are the important words.
So you're suggesting this would come out of the Ride Glenwood tax?
Yeah,
That tax run, we get about $1 million a year, is that right?
1.2. About 1.6.
I think that that's correct, roughly.
That's
But-
correct.
Terry, can Dan clarify though, because I remember from the RAFTA meeting that, again, that's the part that I believe RAFTA pays a portion of that and the city pays a portion? Can we clarify that?
Dan, I got you on the phone.
Okay, oh, okay,
On
Um,
track.
Never mind, we got you.
Oh, we got you.
I'm hanging up.
okay, all right. Yeah, this works a little better. Thank you. If I could share my screen for a second, and I'm not necessarily adept at doing that, but I will try. I think it might be coming on your screens there.
Yep.
What this chart does, and it was included in a memorandum that we forwarded to you that I don't believe made it into your packet, but it's just showing what kind of the forecast, if the bike share system gets up and running early on in 2025 and operated for a full year, what the capital costs for the city would be and what the projected operating costs would be. And then after that investment in capital, the cost would just drop down to operating costs through the remainder of the term through 2028. But RAFTA has a first last mile mobility reserve fund that has been making grants from to our participating members for first last mile mobility types of programs. And so if the city were to apply for that, then because this is an expansion program, RAFTA would cover 50% of the costs for a period of 3 years. It's intended to be seed money to help things get up and running. So in that first year, where back on this chart, it was saying 389, the cost would be 194. When those capital costs drop down in the subsequent year, 2026 to 245, your cost would be roughly 122, and then something similar, 125 or so the following year, if you applied for that funding. And the goal would be during that 3-year period to see if we could find or identify other sources of funding to help defray the cost of this bike share service so that it would help to reduce the impact of the city if, in fact, 276,000 was considered to be too much. And there might be grant funding that's available. There might be other revenue sources that would become available through the state, through the feds. In some of the RAFTA communities, there are some stranded RAFTA taxes, sales taxes, that RAFTA could levy under its authorization. Like there's 2/10 left in Basalt, there's 6/10 in Aspen, 2/10 in Newcastle, there's 4/10 or so in Eagle County. But the RAFTA tax in Glenwood Springs is capped at 1%. It's all being levied. So we don't have that little bit of stranded tax that we have available in other communities that we could ask voters, for example, to approve to help fund this. But there may be other funding mechanisms that might become available if, for example, we approach the legislature and created a first last mile mobility sales tax authorization in the Rural or Regional Transportation Authority law that we could put on the ballot. And maybe after 3 years, if the program's successful, the community is developing support for it, 0.1% or 0.2% of a sales tax could be levied to help fund not only bike share and bike share expansion in your community, but also other first last mile mobility types of options like microtransit. So the goal would be over this 3 years to kind of work on identifying other sources of revenue to pick up the ball when this first last mile mobility seed funding goes away.
Questions for,
I still have a question.
oh, sorry. Charlie's still rolling.
Yeah,
And then Nick.
so I guess my concern, and Dan, I appreciate what you said, but even look at that chart that's up on the screen, says potential FLMM funding. That isn't a guarantee. You know, that's so we could be looking at having to come up with $400,000 or $250,000 over the next several years. And is that correct?
Well, as you know, as city councilors, you know, it's hard to guarantee anything from one year to the next or one day to the next. But so far, the First Last Mile Mobility Reserve Fund has about $5 million in it. It is dedicated to these kinds of programs. So 2025 is not that far away. This year we made grants for $700,000 and we have about $5 million left. So I would anticipate there would still be funding in that reserve, and we've also set it up so that if there is some surplus revenue this year, 10% of that would go into this fund to help replenish it. And we did not decline any of the applications that we received this year for bike share expansion, microtransit, or from the city of Glenwood Springs to help do some planning for bicycle infrastructure. So I think the fund, I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty confident that if the city applies for it, it would meet the criteria and be certainly eligible for the funding and most likely receive what it requests.
One more question. If somebody uses one of these bikes, do they pay for it or is it a free use?
It's free for the first 30 minutes. And WeCycle keeps really great statistics. There would be monthly reports provided to the city that shows that the average ride is maybe within 10 minutes. If people exceed that 30 minutes free time, then it gets kind of pricey then on a per minute basis, because the goal is to have a system that doesn't compete with the private bicycle rental shops and allow people to use these for more long-term purposes.
Paul.
This might be a Terry, this might be a Dan question. I'm just trying to visualize this program a little bit more. We're doing a bike share program with all these different communities. We're not transporting the bikes between communities, so are we? It's all, we have our bikes in Glenwood, they have their bikes in Basalt. Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Marco?
Just a quick question, probably for Terry. When we say 16 stations, 12 stations, 10 stations, does that mean 16 bicycles or 5 to a station?
It means stations.
Terry.
So much more comfortable in the audience. It means stations. So there are a variety of bikes at each station.
How many?
The agreement. Oh, thank you, Dan. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
80
It'd be
bikes.
16 stations and 80 bikes
Okay,
for phase one.
Okay. Thank you.
Shelley?
Terry, can you speak a little bit to kind of the TDM program that we're envisioning and working towards, and maybe the importance of a bike share system as that first last mile piece? And maybe Dan can speak to that too. I mean, how important will this be if we're really working on trying to get people out of their cars in Glenwood and work on our traffic here? What's your feeling on this system?
I believe that all of these efforts will be small pieces of trying to get people out of their cars. I think that bike share in places like Aspen is used for really short little jaunts between places. When we're having conversations with Mitch Ozier, the parking manager in Aspen, he said that with the implementation of the parking program, in addition to all of these other microtransit options that they had in Aspen, they really saw the traffic as it circulated around Aspen, looking for parking, really drop off. And, you know, part of it is obviously that people don't want to pay for parking, but part of it is also that they offer lots of different options to get from, you know, one side of the town to the other. And I think it would serve the same purpose in Glenwood. You know, you would see people that wanted to go to the Meadows Mall or to the city complex or to downtown, maybe grab a bike instead of driving over there. So that's what I would hope for and what I would imagine.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Ingrid?
Terry, well, I'm looking at the Transportation Commission's recommendations. And they're saying that before we commit to this, they want to be sure that if we appropriate these funds, it won't diminish the city's investment in capital expenses for general bicycle network and infrastructure. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that funding for this program should come out of our bus tax fund as opposed to our capital or our A&I fund. And those are the funds where we would support our, you know, our investments in infrastructure. You know, operations for, you know, clearing bike paths and that kind of things are usually through the Parks Department and through the streets fund. So just different funds covering those different things.
Yeah, so if this comes out of the bus fund, you don't feel like it hinders our ability to create the necessary infrastructure for everything else. This is,
I don't.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was hoping you'd say.
Other questions? Well, I have a question. So Terry, I'm looking at this, the breakdown. You know, 389, 245, 253, 276, you know, whatever, 1.165 total. You know what, regardless of whether that's local dollars or we could get, you know, sounds like a pretty good chance to get a 50% match on it. You know, $400,000 in 2025, if we're able to allocate the 194-ish, and RAFT is willing to match that, then yes, that's covered and there's money in theory available, especially if we take out a right Glenwood. But man, $400,000 possibly gets bus service to South Glenwood. And 30% of our population does not have bus service in South Glenwood. And while I love this and I'm incredibly supportive, if there's $400,000 available through the Ride Glenwood and RAFTA, I mean, nothing is better, is going to serve more people first and last mile than actual bus service. Because today, yeah, for a couple hours, it was pretty nice in the middle of the day, but these bikes, a quarter of the year, or a third of the year, are not going to be utilized for first and last mile, where actual bus service, which we haven't had in South Glenwood in 15 years, would serve school district, would serve Mountain Family, would serve my family. And this isn't about me or my family specifically. So I'm having a hard time when there's, you know, if there's money available that it seems like we could eke out from both entities. Why aren't we looking at South Glenwood and why aren't we looking at a Ride Glenwood access out there?
So I would say that we are looking at trying to expand service to the north and to the south. We don't have numbers on it yet. I want to evaluate, you know, all of our options, including fixed transit, like we had in the past, as well as perhaps on-demand service or other types of service. And with our transit expansion study, we will evaluate other funding mechanisms. You know, we currently have a 0.2% sales tax that funds Ride Glenwood. You know, and I think we along with federal, state grants for the system, we eke together our Ride Glenwood's system costs. I do think that that Ride Glenwood system is really valuable to the city on the corridor that it's on. I really feel like it serves a lot of transit dependent people. I would like to see our headways decrease on that route so that we had more service to those areas. In addition, you know, we do need to look at the north part of the city and the south part of the city. So I don't have numbers yet, but I want to look at additional funding for our system as a whole, you know, for route expansions, for other transit options. You know, I know that everybody hates to talk about paid parking, but I will say that, you know, paid parking is one of the ways that these types of micromobility or transit system expansions can be funded. And there are a variety of ways, but I do think that when we have our the results of our transit expansion study, I'll bring you a menu of options for paying for improvements.
Any other questions?
It's basically a question of process though. Since I'm kind of new to this, a memorandum of understanding, what does it bind us to?
1 year.
If we say yes to this, we're on the hook for a year. Is that correct?
No,
Max is the 389 and only optimistic.
No, that's
if,
Right.
Yeah.
Hold
but
on,
it's-
hold on.
That's what he's saying.
Dan, Counselor Blankenship.
yeah, if I might, and I'm sorry for interrupting. What signing the MOU, if you were to agree to approve it tonight, what that does is it just allows us to invest $60,000 of rafted funds to plan your system. And that system planning process would take place in 2023, possibly early in 2024 as well. There would come a point in 2024, most likely, when equipment would need to be ordered in order to have the system implemented in 2025. RAFTA would be placing deposit, the 50% deposit on the equipment at that time. And we would want to have some clear indication by sometime in 2024, after you have a better sense of what your system looks like and what it's going to cost, after having gone through the planning process, that the city is, you know, we get the equipment that and start to install it, that the city is going to be a partner in this. But tonight, you're just being asked to sign the MOU, and each year, as the MOU has laid out, there's a scope of work that would be done and a budget that would be approved. And if you didn't want to approve the budget or all of the budget or the scope, you wouldn't have to do it. If you didn't want to do anything, you wouldn't have to do that. It's basically on an annual basis that you have an opportunity to kind of opt in or opt out, or opt in at whatever level you're comfortable at opting in at. There are provisions in the MOU that if you said, hey, we're not going to do this anymore after we've installed the equipment and we've operated it for a few years, then RAFTA would purchase it back at its depreciated value and use it in other places in the system. So tonight, you're not signing on for $389,000 or 50% of that if you were to apply for first last mile mobility funding. You would be making those kinds of decisions in 2024, and you're in the driver's seat. You're not bound to anything.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
we're basically just being asked to approve the planning process at this point, if I understand this correctly.
That's correct.
With no monetary
With
investment
no
this
money
evening.
down. With no money down.
From us.
If it would make it sweeter, we might pay you to be involved.
Okay. Okay. 389,000 sounds awesome.
But this way, Mr. Mayor, at least you would have more facts by which to make a decision about going with bus service to the south side or bike share, because there might be the planning information available from the study that is being done about that right now. So you could have some comparisons and look at the cost per ride and all the other things without really having to make that decision tonight.
Further questions? I see a couple members of the public. Would anybody from the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion or further comments.
And that was, we also checked online. There were no comments online.
I see none.
Okay.
Okay. I'll just make the comment. Thank you, Dan, for being here. And I really am interested in the bike share program. I'd like to see the planning move forward, and it's very low risk to us at this point to move forward with the MOU tonight. I'll say to Terry also, though, I do think it's important that we take a good look at Ride Glenwood, and just looking at the bus service routes and my experience riding RAFTA, and I haven't ridden Ride Glenwood, I'll say, but I've ridden RAFTA up Valley and I've ridden it into town, and just seeing the buses traveling on Grand, and having our Ride Glenwood follow the same route as the RAFTA local service just is, to the mayor's point, we have other areas of the city that it would be great if we could serve those with Ride Glenwood, South Glenwood, and out west or north, and then coordinate better with the RAFTA service. So I'm hoping we'll have the results of those studies that you're working on for that. And we've talked about that for years. I'd love to see us put a little, get some answers on that in 2023, as well as the design move forward for the bike share. So I would like to move right now that we approve the MOU with RAFTA for the bike share program. Let me get back to that motion.
Second.
And is that all I need to say? Approve the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority Memorandum of Understanding for the planning and implementation, just planning of the bike share program.
Re-second.
Thanks.
Been by Shelley, seconded by Tony. Other comments? Charlie, I see your.
Yeah, well, the concept of the bike share is a really good concept. And I think planning is always good, but I'm really concerned that we're doing this in a vacuum. I got a council a little over 3 years ago, I guess 3.5 years ago. And about that time, we came up with a transportation plan. It was one of the first meetings I was at. And we're talking about this last mile and microbuses and other types of things. And I'm here 3 years later and we don't have anything on that yet. I'm not blaming the staff. The problem is I'm making a decision to plan for one particular scope of thing that I'm not sure that I would approve. Right now, I tend to agree with the statement the mayor made earlier. I can't see committing, whether it's $400,000 and $250,000 a year after that, or whether it's half of that. I can't see committing that without knowing if the overall what we're going to do. And it's hard because I hate not doing anything. It's one of the worst things that I think I complained this morning. It takes forever for government to do anything. But I really have some trouble with this. So I'm not going to support this. It isn't against the concept. It's against the isolated part of the concept.
And even knowing that the motion is only to do the planning.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I echo my fellow councilors' comments, really both of them actually, but I will move, I will support this for the planning sake of it, like Councilor Kaup said, but I will most likely not be able to move forward next year without having the other puzzle piece of bus service as an alternative of micro, whatever you guys called it. That was great. So for planning, absolutely. So we compare, but I'd love to see the Ride Glenwood bus system revamped and expanded.
More data to come.
Anybody else? I'll just say, as my Ward 5 hat, and maybe not the mayor hat or RAFTA representative hat, that I'm okay with this for the reasons that Marco specified, and I'm probably where Marco is. Whether it's RAFTA paying for half and we pay for half in the future, we are RAFTA. So we're still paying. I mean, we're like a third of the revenue for RAFTA. So, and we're partners with RAFTA. RAFTA is us. We are RAFTA. I keep saying that for anybody who's ever confused on that. It's just very, very difficult because once we start planning for something, a wise man once said, money follows plans. And when we start planning for things, it's just going to be very, very easy for us to go, well, we've already planned this. And boy, how nice does it look? We've had these groups and our transportation commission supports it. And oh, look, RAFTA is going to give us this grant that pays for half of it. And I just feel like we're planning for something when it's a little, I think the word offensive is too strong, but it tweaks me a little bit that we don't have any plans for bus service to that 100% of the people can use 100% of the year, which is bus service, whether it's bus service, microtransit, whatever we want to call it. I want to see that plan before I want to see this plan. And this feels like we're putting the fun cart ahead of the practical cart. So I just don't know that I can support it, because I know just how we will get down on this path without thought. But to Marco's point, if we see this and we see a good, robust plan next year, and we have a way to fund these things, I will totally, completely change, flip on a switch where we're at. So this is not a hard no, never. It's just, I think I want to see the planning for something that benefits everybody all year round before we do this. Yes.
And I was
To that point.
to that point, as our RAFTA representatives, bring that up, make that a priority. Concurrently, both can be done. I will be supporting the motion because I feel like it's the plans, especially not the plans that require a study or for us to invest any money, are great. It's a tool for us to move forward. Big picture, we have and continue to recognize that transportation management is one of the biggest challenges that we face moving forward. And this is a puzzle piece within that. It's the how do you eat an elephant? And if we say we're not taking one bite until it's just like I want it, I think that we are doing a disservice to the big picture. So this is a piece, encourage it to move forward, and concurrently recognize that you bring up really good points. Thank you.
Paula?
I hate to be repetitive, but the big thing for me is this is part of the planning we need to see as well when we explore the options that we're requesting Terry also bring to the table. It's not costing us. And in the long run, if we get in the direction of moving people out of their cars and this becomes one component, I think that's really important. So I will be supporting this.
Awesome. All right. Anybody else? Ryan, I was going to say, Sarah, let's call the question.
Why is minus red? Plus green.
It's a psychological thing.
The motion passes 4-3. Mayor Pro Tem Willman, no. Councilor Russo, yes. Mayor Godus, no. Councilor Dem, yes. Councilor Stepp, yes. Councilor Kaup, yes. Councilor Hershey, no.
Guess we know who the fun sponges are.
Hey, I'm just trying to eat this elephant without eating the sugar first.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Dan, very much. We appreciate your patience as we work through those.
No, thank you. Thank you very
Sorry to
much.
call your office on the phone, Dan, but thank you.
That's okay. Take
See
care,
you later.
everybody. Thank you so much.
See you on the train. Thank you. Inside joke, Jonathan.
Oh,
I
sorry.
said, see you on the light rail.
Oh, that's so were you?
Item number
Yes, item number 13, MOU for Habitat for Humanity agreement.
Yes, good evening, Council and Mayor. Hannah Klausman, Acting Director for Community Development. This item is a continuation from your November 17th meeting for additional requested information regarding Proposition 123 from the state and how this project might impact that. I believe staff gave you some information earlier today in your work session. Hopefully that was clarifying. For purposes of the public, I'll just say that staff did consult on Proposition 123 and found no significant impact by this project, and most likely it would count as a credit towards the 3% increase in affordable housing component of Proposition 123 if the city does decide to go for that funding. There are obviously other components that we will have to meet. But if there are no other questions regarding that specific item, I have one slide that I'm going to share that is hopefully clarifying on all of the points that were discussed for the Habitat for Humanity agreements at the last meeting. So I'm going to go. So hopefully you are seeing the Memorandum of Understanding document. I have it specifically pulled up to Section 6, Sale of Units, and I've highlighted 3 different sections that I'm going to talk about in different colors so that we can easily identify them. And really what I want to bring this conversation to is a clarification on priority versus requirement in some of the aspects that council brought up the last time. And hopefully this will provide a clear path for us for approving the documents tonight with Habitat for Humanity. So under buyer selection, we have the first area for discussion, which is the residency component. This was one of 4 action items that City Council did take action on back in October. And this states, buyers with at least 2 years of residency within Habitat for Humanity's service area shall have priority. I've highlighted this and also bolded priority to make sure that council understands this is a priority and not a requirement. So it is giving an advantage for buyers to qualify who have lived in the area for longer, but it does not mean that someone who hasn't lived in the area or just moved here can't also apply. It's a priority. Next is the income requirement, which is item B. This is a requirement, not a priority. This one's pretty clear, I think, with council. You guys set that at 80% AMI and 100% AMI and split the Iddings project a little bit in there as to those thresholds. And then finally, we've got the employment requirement. Again, this is a requirement and not a priority, but then there's also a priority component to it. So in yellow, this is the requirement. Employment. Buyers must be employed at time of purchase on a full-time basis within the Glenwood Springs city limits or within the 81601 zip code, with priority for buyers in the city limits. And then in the green, after purchase, this is the ongoing qualification piece that you've been discussing and we have varying opinions on. After acquisition, each owner must continue to be employed on a full-time basis within the Roaring Fork Valley from Glenwood Springs to Basalt and to Rifle. The reason why that was stated as Basalt to Rifle and not Habitat for Humanity's service area as in the blue above is to give the nod to what council has been talking about, and there are strong opinions about, of not creating housing for Aspen's workforce or Up Valley's workforce. So Habitat did put this in to basically say, when a buyer qualifies at time of purchase, let's say they work in the city of Glenwood Springs, they are prioritized person that way. And during the time that they own this unit, they take a job in Carbondale. They would still be eligible to remain in their home. If they took a job in Aspen, according to how this is written right now, they would need to sell their home. So I think the distinction between that, where it's a qualification, City Council was asking, does this need to be limited to just Glenwood Springs? And Habitat was pretty strong in saying that that's not how they operate. And there were some questions of, well, then why are you still limiting it to this area? This is that flexibility, right? Like, it doesn't need to be so specific to Glenwood that it's that limiting, but this allows someone some mobility in the valley. I think we're all very familiar with work patterns here and how people shift around. I have lived in Rifle and worked in Glenwood. I've lived in Glenwood and worked in Rifle. So a little bit of that. And I think from staff's perspective and in talking with Habitat, these points as presented really do provide the housing stability and the flexibility to make this program work. With that, I think I'm going to open it back up to you guys for any questions. With one final comment from me, I would strongly encourage that that you are able to reach an agreement tonight on moving forward with this project and these agreements. There are timelines in play for entitlement as well as grant funding that is relying on this moving forward. So hopefully we can reach that tonight and that I've added some clarity to your options. Thank you.
My first question is, how are you feeling?
I'm actually doing much better today, much better.
Good,
Thanks,
good.
Hannah.
Thank you for coming tonight. Soldier. Any questions for Hannah? Charlie?
And I started asking this question a little bit last time, Carolyn, let's try it for you, and that is that when we first met with Habitat to talk about, I better get close to the microphone, I just saw Amy look at me. We first talked to Habitat about this entire project. It was pretty clear that Habitat's position was once you buy the house, it doesn't make any difference where you live. You're trying to establish community and a connection to community. So when I saw this in the packet a couple of weeks ago, I was concerned that we seem to be backing off of Habitat. And I think Hannah may have just explained it. That's the reactive things that you perceive this council has directed. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
You probably need it. Sorry. Maybe for the record, you don't mind identify yourself.
Carolyn Meadowcroft, Glenwood Springs. So yes, that is exactly what we have done. Normally, we'd be looking at our service area from Parachute to Aspen. So because of everyone's strong position about not providing housing for Aspen, then we have backed off of that. And you know, we can work with that particular location for employment.
But if this was Habitat's project to make a decision, once they bought it, if they qualified and they hit the priorities and all those types of things, they
Correct.
would own it as long as they wanted to own it. It wouldn't make any difference where they were employed. Is that correct?
As long as they were employed within that area that we've described as basically rifle to basalt. If they get a job, they become
But,
employed in Aspen.
Sorry, not my question. If Habitat was going to do the normal policy,
Oh.
it would be the entire service area.
That would be correct. Only the service area, though, if they obtain employment outside, like in Grand Junction or Eagle, you know, they would have to come back and sell the home to Habitat. So what we've done is we've just shrunk the area in connection with our Glenwood
All right, so
process.
that I didn't understand it correctly when you guys originally approached, because I thought they were there, as long as they live there, they could stay there no matter where they work. So that isn't your normal policy.
That is not our normal.
Okay,
policy.
thank you very much.
Marco.
Just a quick question. So you work, you live, you never sell it, time goes on, you're ready to retire. What happens at that point when you don't work anymore?
So our intent has always been to provide affordable housing long-term. That when someone retires, they do not have to give out their home. We are looking at, you know, trying to make sure that we're providing employee housing, but also affordable housing. So the criteria has not been that they would have to sell it. Now, just as a point here to make sure you understand, is that someone could not will a property to their heirs. That would not be allowed because they would be considered a non-qualified buyer because they did not get or
Right.
transfer, they did not obtain it through. the
But you
right
can live
process.
out your days, no problem.
That is our intent.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody from the public like to speak on this? Anybody online like to speak on this? No, okay. I'll bring it back for further comments or a motion.
I move to approve the memorandum of understanding with, for Habitat, for Humanity agreement.
I'll second.
Moved by Charlie, seconded by Paula. Any comments? I'll give my comment because I'm going to vote against this. You know, I worry that we are building housing. I love that we have a residency requirement for the first sale. I just think, and I've shared this, I don't think my position's been unclear, that we're, regardless of whether it's Aspen or not, if it's not Glenwood Springs workforce housing, but yet we're using up to $1 million of land and impact fees. Those are taxpayer assets, and those taxpayer assets up to $1 million. I feel pretty confident within 4 or 5 years, the majority of the people who are going to be living in here will take higher paying jobs outside the city, because that's where the higher paying jobs reside, in Carbondale and Basalt. And so I think what we will have as soon as a couple years, and certainly within a couple decades, is a majority, if not all, of the people living in these units will not be employed by Glenwood Springs businesses, which just creates more growth, more people, but without providing the benefits of workers for our workforce. You know, we want people to live in the communities where they work and where they serve. You know, and I think the retirement thing is also another issue. This is going to turn into senior housing because people will never leave these units. It's too cost effective. It's almost like golden handcuffs. I've seen it in Aspen quite a bit where those units, you know, people will hold on to part-time jobs. They will do whatever they can to maintain their residency because at least in Pitkin County, once you retire out of the workforce, you by and large, there's some units that do not require this, but by and large, you lose your ability to live in those units. Those units have to go back to a young family. Those units have to go back to younger people starting up that are going to need to get their foot in the door in this community. So I'm all about the conversation of senior housing. I'm all about the conversation of regional housing. But right now, we don't have a robust senior housing program. We don't have a robust regional housing program. But we do have is $1 million worth of city funds and assets that are going to be going towards people who aren't eventually probably going to be in our workforce. So I just want to have that said very succinctly. And for that reason, I'll vote against it. I think what we're doing with Habitat and the partnership we have, and Carolyn, what you are dedicating many waking hours to is fantastic. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Something.
Yeah.
And that is just to say, I continually appreciate the perspective that the council members have brought that don't want to have this go the traditional route of a habitat project and want it more to support workforce housing. Because you know, this is a top tier or concern for us and we need workforce housing. But I think you have to always pause and look at who are you partnering with and what's the goal of the partnership? I mean, we have a goal and it's to have affordable housing, but so too does Habitat. I actually looked it up. It says grounded in strong community relationships, Habitat RFV advocates for affordable housing and reuse of locally donated items that are restored to generate revenue that enables the development of affordable ownership housing for families and individuals from Parachute to Aspen. The goal there is not workforce housing for Glenwood Springs. So you have to look at who you're partnering with and you have to align with them. We put out an RFP. They were the only ones who submitted it or, you know, submitted a proposal. And we're very grateful that you brought it forward. Once again, I'll use the same logic I did before. We have concerns and it is how do you eat an elephant? This is one bite of the elephant. And if we don't, I mean, and I know you're moving forward on it because there's a support here, but if we don't look at all these alternatives to solving the concern we have, and we always just, well, it's not perfect, it's not exactly what we want, then we're not even taking that first bite. This is the first bite. This will be a component and we get to step away from it. We get to put it in Habitat's very capable hands and have this opportunity for our community. So let's take the money we just got from 2C. Let's look at all these other alternatives and we can make those parameters stronger so that we do satisfy your concerns. But for the time being, thank you. And I'm ready to support this motion.
Sarah, let's go. Oh, sorry. Sean?
Just very briefly, in question, you asked this during our work session earlier today on 2C question. I believe Carolyn indicated that if we restricted this only to Glenwood residents and said you couldn't, if you weren't working here, they would not probably do the deal. To me, that's critical. We went into this understanding that it was a broader area. They've restricted the area. I think they've made good progress. I think it's a small project. I'm not saying I will not support what you're saying for anything coming under 2C. So I am going to vote for this.
Sarah, let's call the question.
Sorry, Dave.
The motion passes 6-1. Mayor Pro Tem Willman, yes. Counselor Russo, yes. Mayor Godus, no. Counselor Dem, yes. Counselor Stepp, yes. Counselor Kalp, yes. Counselor Hershey, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Hannah, fill out your scorecard. Yeah.
Would you mind if I made a brief comment?
You know, yeah, as long as it's brief, sir.
David Myler on behalf of Habitat for Humanity. I just want to assure you that we understand where you're coming from. And we're totally dedicated to creating housing for Glenwood Springs employees. One of the underlying concepts that support Habitat is people should live close to where they work. We built some flexibility in because life happens. But for the most part, our objective is exactly the same as yours. We want to house people who work in Glenwood in these projects. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll say I'm very excited about this project, so thank you.
All
Thank you.
right.
Well, back to bed for me.
Yes.
Feel
Thanks,
better.
Hannah.
Feel better, Hannah. Go watch some Netflix. Oops, she hung up.
One more option. Okay. You need it right now. We have one more item. Okay. We can do it, Charlie. We can.
It's quick.
Okay. Last item on the regular agenda is determination of whether to join Associated Governors of Northwest Colorado.
Associated governments, not governors.
Excuse me. Yeah. Point of order.
Contrary to
Yes.
Barb Kirkmeyer, we're not separating out states yet. Or who was the congressman? Former DA
Determination.
from Weld County.
Yeah.
Forgot his name.
So
Anyway.
I believe Counselor Wusso, you had requested this to be on, and I believe we had asked for, you were going to bring some information on, I think we asked, I thought there was going to be some information. Is there any, did you have any information for us?
Hold on.
I think Danielle has she pulled up some information to be able to fill in the numbers for you today.
Danielle Campbell, Economic Development Specialist. Yes, the question I believe was to become a member for AGNC. Historically, we were a member in 2019. As of right now, we are not. A cost to be a member is about $3,700 on a yearly basis. And I believe there was an additional question, and let me know if this is correct or not, to become a voting member. And so whenever we reached out to AGNC, there was the conversation on how to become a voting member is based upon the county. One municipality within the county that is a member, they all have to vote on who that voting member is. So for right now, it is Newcastle. And in order for that to change, if we move forward to become a voting member, or I'm sorry, become a member, in order to become a voting member, Newcastle would either have to consider stepping down, or it would be a conversation of someone who is a voting member of a municipality to put it to a vote. And then that's how that conversation would take place. As of right now, we are currently with Northwest Cogs as well, who's also an economic development district for some additional background. But that's all I have.
And we are a voting member for Northwestern Cogs, right?
I believe so. That was,
Yeah.
I will say it's, was
Jen,
Jen.
that is our representative. Yeah.
Has historically been a part of those. But yes, I
Yeah.
believe so. Correct.
And just from my experience being on AGNC, that vote comes up annually,
Okay.
I believe, annually or bi.
So currently, I believe I am Jen Uten was the staff representative for Northwestern Cogs, but I would step into that position. I guess I'm not inclined to say that we need to be part of everything. And certainly there's a dollar figure, like where else can that be appropriated? I think that as a government of Northwestern Colorado, it's nice to have that representation. I also understand that there are organizations that we don't always align with because of philosophies or historical, maybe just ways that we do business. But I also think that that's equally important then to be at the table and listening and understanding what other communities in our area are dealing with. And that was why I brought it up. Tony?
I had a comment. Go ahead. I don't know if you recall, Mr. Mayor, but I served on the city council in Aspen with Mayor Rachel Richards.
Yes.
And we were a member of Club 20.
Yes.
Now, I don't think you can find a more diametrically opposed organizations than Aspen. I think we've become since 2000 a lot more polarized. Thank you. I just, I represent all the people of Glenwood Springs and I just don't know if the views in this community, I mean, just look at the mine protest that this community was able to put together and it's still fighting the mine and up Oasis Creek, that we're on the same page with a community like Delta or Mesa County or the drill baby drill counties, or certainly Weld County, where they have a different view. And maybe you're right, Ingrid, it's a good idea to at least have a voice at the table. But, what's that old Groucho Marx joke? I don't want to belong to a club that would have me as a member. I don't know that I want to belong to a club that would have some of these views that, not just me particularly, I think I'm a little more conservative than Jonathan, for example, but not belong to a group that doesn't represent this community's values. That's my concern.
I have a comment.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Tony. Good, Paul.
We are a member of Club 20, City of Glenwood Springs, and I'm the liaison for it. And I do have to say that I've seen changes there over the last 3 years. As far as participation, I know Rachel as well, Tony, and there's been some different activity in the last year or so that it's very interesting to see being embraced. And I also get emails from AGMC because I used to be the representative. And it was interesting, and this is along the lines of what you were saying, Tony. It was interesting that a recent email that I saw pointed out that they are a nonpartisan group. And so having a voice at that table, I think makes a difference on conversation and opening pathways.
And if you look at recent elections, to truly represent our community, we don't just lean left or right. I mean, I think that's the crux of what we're dealing with nationwide is we have a very split demographic. And I think having us be educated and being part of groups that represent diversity in perspectives is how we grow and understand what's happening within our neighborhoods and our communities and our adjacent counties.
And I would say, I think I don't know, I think a lot of us were on, I don't think you were, I don't think Marco was on council when we got off of ACNG, but the history of ACNG, we haven't been a historical member. We got on, counselor wanted to get on in 2015, so we did. And then in 2019, I think to Tony's point, the alignment of us being a member, essentially a non-voting member of an organization that is really diametrically opposed to a lot of the things that are in our strategic plan, in our comp plan, in our, climate change, extraction, things like that. I think is some of the reasons we got out. We made a decision. It wasn't just because I know they say they're nonpartisan, but at that time that we got out, they were incredibly nonpartisan. And I did attend via Zoom several of their meetings. And it wasn't productive. And I think there's a lot of organizations we can be involved in. If we're looking to be a part of organizations that reflect the values of this community, things like the I-70 Coalition, CC4CA, CAST, there's no scenario where Mesa County or Moffett County or Craig or Rio Blanca ever come to a CAST meeting, because there we're talking about climate change in a real way. We're talking about taxing vacation rentals, taxes, period, affordable housing, things that are very specific to this community. And I think the reason we got off it in 2019, and when I look at some of the recent resolutions they've passed in 2021, opposition to the 30 by 30 land preservation goal. This is Biden's goal to preserve 30% of all federal land from extraction. Resolution regarding redistricting, resolution opposing ballot initiative 16, which I can't remember what that is, but there's another one. They're opposing the statewide building standards, which the bottom line state standards are to make things more fire resistant and LEED certified, or not economical necessarily, but environmental. Those are things we've all taken positions on, and I just worry that we are going to send someone as a representative to this group that is going to, and we just talked about it before. I think it's really good when Charlie brought up the CML, and great question, Ingrid, about what brings it back to us for consideration. And like I said then, and I wasn't thinking about this, but when there's something that aligns with us, it's pretty easy for a representative to go, yeah, that's what we think, without necessarily having to reference a specific subsection of our code or something like that. But there's other things we have to bring back. And I think looking at, the letter of concern outlining pandemic concerns, wolf reintroduction, are things that we've either taken strong positions in opposition for. And I just think that it's if we're looking to build bridges and work, I think Club 20 is great because they encompass the entire western slope. And their mission just seems a lot broader than AC and Gs. And so I'm great with continuing with Club 20 if we want to continue that relationship and reach out to people who don't agree with us on a lot of things. But I think that there's a lot of groups, if we want to be involved in and reach out, there's much more productive ways that we can actually move the needle on. So I'm not opposed to talking to anybody, but may I suggest, instead of a yes or no, these are public meetings. Ingrid, if you have an interest, how about you go to these meetings for 6 months? And, I'm more than happy to, have the city reimburse you mileage or whatever it is, as you would if you remember. But before we commit, let's see, because right now there's a lot of like, well, it used to be like this, and I'm kind of seeing some stuff that, doesn't align with us and who we are as a community. But I would love to give that opportunity for 6 months for you to go to, even if it's on Zoom, and see what value they bring to this community and to the taxpayers and to this council, and report back. And I'd love to, if that would be something people would support. I don't want to say a hard no now.
Yeah, that's not what I'm asking for, nor is it what's on the agenda, because the agenda item is not whether or not we want to stay with Club 20, but whether or not we want to rejoin AGNC. And so, hold on.
Yeah.
And so what I'm asking for is for support to allow us 1 year. I'm very comfortable with saying in 1 year, we'll just put it right in the books that we will have a discussion and say, is it worthwhile? I'm not looking for a group with an alignment. In fact, I'm looking for an alternative, because I think that historically, and to maybe counter the polarity, the polarized opinions that we continually see here, I'm looking for opportunity to join something that we aren't as in alignment with, so that we maybe dilute a little bit of the polarizing perspectives and kind of positions that we historically have been taking more and more in our communities. I'm looking to join something that has a tendency to not maybe be quite as in alignment with this council or even half of our community, but maybe to well represent the other half of the community who thinks and sees differently and votes, the other 50%, because more and more that's what we're seeing. So what I want to do is I want to join. I'm asking for 1 year. We can come back at the end of it and we can evaluate it. And knowing that, $3,700, when we look at the other money we spend probably just on council meals over the year, I'm asking to have that so we can well represent the diversity that exists in our community.
And
So,
I guess I'm just asking a question. How would you attending
Mhm.
as a public meeting attendee that does not have a vote,
Mhm.
who's not paying 3,700, how does that differ any bit at all with you attending as a member, paying money and still not having a vote?
I think what it does is it shows that we are involved and supportive of groups of people, regardless of what perspective they we're not looking for one side of the aisle. I'm looking, this is by having our name as part of it, we become a larger group of individuals. So I don't know that the merits of this, I'm not looking for that. My request here is not that I continue a dialogue up here on whether or not we join or not join. I'm looking for, I'd like to make a motion to join AGNC for 1 calendar year, and we can reevaluate at the end of the year.
Can I add to what you're saying, just for clarification, because I was a member?
Can we just ask for a second? There's a motion made. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Now.
So from my experience in these meetings, you weren't a voting member, but you were encouraged to engage and participate in the conversations prior to a vote being taken. So being a representative. She would still have a voice there. She just wouldn't have the final voice.
Do you think, Paula, that, obviously there is other people, I've read some meeting minutes, and there's always people from the public there, and maybe they're affiliated, but regardless of whether you're a voting member or a non-voting member or a member of the public, do you feel that if you're attending as a representative of Glenwood Springs, even if you're not a member, that you would still be asked for your voice?
I think there's more engagement when you're a part of the organization as opposed to being just attending. And I will say that when I was going, our development, I can't remember his name, he's in Denver. He
Matt
works at-
Nunez.
Yes, he was there with me as well most times, so he had comments as well. So having city staff and myself there, just being representative of what we stood for, I think makes a difference. And there's a lot of discussion on economic development and things along that line. It's good to get perspective of what some of these other areas are dealing with as far as economic development. It gives you a balance against, we're a tourism-based economy. What's Craig dealing with? They're dealing with closing their plant that's providing electricity. So, I mean, it just offers perspective.
Yeah.
You know.
Meet once a month.
They meet once a month, yes.
Go, Shelley.
I'll just say, I will support this because I appreciate Counselor Russo's willingness to reach out to another region. And I think when we can have regional engagement like that, it's helpful. I would encourage you though, and I guess what I see in the opportunity is to be part of, to engage with other communities and understand their struggles and what they're going through, but also be leaders for Glenwood Springs. There might be different ideas. And I think finding middle ground, finding common cause for different kinds of economic development. And, we're looking at capacity issues on I-70 going west. So I could imagine that coming up at some point and, being an advocate for transit or being, being possibly another voice that might not come out as strongly there. I did look through their website and saw some of their resolutions on forest health and management and things like that, water. So I will support this.
Thank you. And one last thing that I didn't mention is this is an opportunity to build bridges. This is an opportunity to make connections with fellow counselors and even commissioners so that when we do need to do an ask or we collaborate for a regional benefit, we know these people and they know us.
And I just would say, I think last thing for me is it's not about, I kind of reject the both Counselor Wusso and Hershey's characterization. This is about a left, right, or do we align with them politically or not? Well, kind of. But, when you're talking about just transition, that's, getting communities off coal, wolf reintroduction, letter to Governor Polis outlining pandemic concerns. That was, something that we didn't necessarily align with. The only thing I'm looking at a dozen different resolutions and oppositions, and there's one that is alternative routes build to I-70, and that's the Cottonwood Pass. And that one really sticks out like, okay, that's good, but that's one of 12. It's not about left or right or people we agree with or don't agree with. It's, a welcome center and dinosaur. It's opposition to Prop 112. I just don't think we have any, it's not about finding common ground with these folks as far as political or different views. It's just about simply, it doesn't pertain to us. But, if you want to do it, I just don't see the value in being a member for a year versus being an attendee for a year. But, so I probably won't support it. Any other comments? Sarah, let's call the question.
Thank you.
Motion passed 6-1. Mayor Pro Tem Wilman, yes. Counselor Russo, yes. Mayor Godes, no. Counselor Dem, yes. Counselor Stepp, yes. Counselor Kelp, yes. Counselor Hershey, yes.
Okay, council comments. Charlotte. Then Paula, then Shelley.
Yeah, a couple of things, and some of this came out of the discussion of Habitat at the last meeting.
He's pretty close to the mic.
No, it's fine. I'm just kidding. We adopted, about a year into my term, some procedural rules and how we're going to do things, and it was great to adopt them, but they're sort of like some of our plans we adopt. They seem to get lost in the millwork. It has seemed to be becoming more and more evident as we do meetings that we are, and I'm trying to look at people, but I can't because they can't hear me, but we are, we're interrupting each other. The rule was kind of, you have 2 comments, 2 bites at the apple. The second bite is only if you're responding to someone. And we don't seem to be following that. And I think we need to have an update on that. I know we got lots of stuff on our agenda, but I really think we should have an update. Whether we do it now or we do it in May, because there may be new members on the council is probably, a decision we should talk about, but I'm concerned about it. The other 2 things that tend to be, one of these is more personal. As you all know, I have hearing aids and I have somewhat of a hearing deficit. I have tried, and tonight I tried a new setting on my hearing aids and seemed to work better. But I still have trouble hearing people. And I asked that we look, because when we got this equipment that's sitting here in front of us, which was fairly expensive, I asked for the speaker to be here because I knew from being in courtrooms that helps me, hear things. And Steve is looking into that. So I did talk to Steve about it afterwards. The other thing that was kind of what pushed it over the edge at the last meeting is we were talking Habitat. I had my light on and I was doing stuff, and kind of conversation ended. I'll leave it at that. And part of the reason that that's going on, there were a lot of interruptions. A lot of other people spoke, even though I had my light on, is because we don't have the system that we used to have up here that said Charlie's next, Marco's next, and that. And I've talked to the mayor about this as well. So,
And the mayor agrees with you wholeheartedly.
yes. And so I just want to bring it up, and I think if we have a general support, we should direct staff, and I think Steve is just starting to look into it to see if we can't get some kind of a system. So we're recognized in order, and I would encourage everyone to read those procedural rules again. We really are. It's causing what appears to be dysfunction. It really isn't dysfunction. We're having good discussions. I think that's important. But I do think that the interruptions are becoming really distracting. So that's my comments.
Is there any way, Steve, to bring back the old system where we can just, without bringing back the old system?
Well, I don't think we'll need to. The system that we've got now is designed to be pretty flexible there. So I think what you're talking about can be done just by changing the settings.
Well, how do I recognize, how do I, as the administrator of this meeting, see that Charlie, then Paul, and I don't need to know like 1, 2, 3, 4. I just need to know
Next.
I just need to know who's next. I need to press that. I need to see the flashing button, push it, and then find who's the next flashing button.
Yeah, and I think there's a little monitor that, we need to
Okay.
establish up there, and I think we can do what you guys
Yeah.
are looking to. It gets a little bit detailed, so it'd probably be a good idea for us to, have these guys out and kind of sit down and make sure that you guys understand what the options are and make those decisions.
Isn't there something on Amazon that just, really, it seems like a low tech thing. It just doesn't seem like this like $3,000 multi-screen Tesla, interface that we have to add on. I don't know. Am I asking something? Am I saying, oh, that seems simple, and it's not really simple?
Probably.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy to look into that.
Okay. I don't know. Thanks, Ray. Paula?
Just a consideration again of moving council comments to the beginning of the meeting, and consideration for the whole council to decide on whether or not to include the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of each meeting again.
Let's take the first one. Can we just have a quick conversation? Maybe not quick, but can we have a are you okay with having a conversation about council?
That would be great.
Charlie, you said something today about it. You had an opinion about it. Do you have an opinion on front or last?
For council comments, I think it's run more efficiently. I think we we tend to be shorter, maybe, and it's not that bad. And we've been getting out here 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. That's great. And if we can continue, that's going to be wonderful. And maybe we'll be able to do that. But I think at the end, it's better. If we do it at the beginning, very honestly, I don't think most of the people, we're talking to each other, most people aren't really interested in what we're saying. And I think it's taken away from people who are here for other matters, which is why I think when Jonathan and I talked about realigning the agenda, it was one of the things that we had talked about. And I don't know if we talked to you guys about it or we just did it. So I apologize if we didn't bring it to you. That was probably inappropriate, but
For myself, for council comments, a lot of times I'm announcing things that, maybe the River Commission is having a River Fest or things that I want the community to know about. By this time, everybody's left the room.
okay.
Nobody's listening online. And so it's more than just a discussion on things of our priorities or our concerns, but a way for us to communicate with the public.
And I'm not
is the way I
wedded
look
to
at it.
either side.
So just
Yeah.
for some stats, we have 5 people watching right now. For the first hour and a half, we had 3 people watching. So I don't know that there's a lot of people out there that are actively watching us in live.
I'm just saying more along the lines that most of the times when we come in the evening, the room has a number of different people in it for different agenda items, and they would be hearing things that we had to speak to. So
And they do trickle out as the agenda items get ticked off. So I can appreciate your perspective. Has absolute validity, is that if we do council comments at the beginning, there is usually a larger crowd. And certainly by this time in the evening, we have lost our audience. So, I think that sometimes in all transparency, there's a better way for us as city councilors to get our messages disseminated. And it's like our Facebook pages, there's all these opportunities that we probably have. But if the goal is to get the audience, a larger audience to hear, council comments need to be at the beginning.
I will note,
Yes, Tony,
just briefly, I will note that Cass is here. She is the newspaper. If Paula or I say something earth shattering, I'm sure she would write it down and it might make the newspaper. So that's another way that, and if she's not here, I know she's listening or listens after the fact, which a lot of people actually do. You'd be surprised.
after the 121 views is kind of the over under.
Yeah. I watch.
And I think, it got moved to the back because I think there was, from a procedural standpoint, when we had it in the beginning, sometimes we would go on and on and on. And I say that collectively, this is not a indictment, and hell, no one goes on and on, sometimes more than me. But the people that are here in the beginning for an agenda item are here for that agenda item. They don't care about the River Commission. They don't necessarily care. And I think subjecting them to a half hour of us talking about our boards and commissions and this and that, and whether we're going to do this, I don't think that that's honoring to the community. I think if we want to do it in the beginning, because there's a good reason to, I would just say that that has the most ability to hijack our agenda than anything that we do. Because then we get in conversation and then we're like, well, what do we think? And then we start to micro design fridge sizes as an example. So I guess if we're going to make that determination, and I'm great if we do, I guess I would just say, let's limit it to a total of 10 minutes. Because when we do it at the end of the night, we can still talk about those boards and commissions. We can still do all of those things. No one's saying that we can't, but it's also honoring for the people who are here for a very specific reason to not have to wade through those comments, and they can just be, because we try to put the people like Habitat or whatever very first on the agenda so we can honor their time. They can get here, get back to their families. And we have not shown in the past discipline to do that. So
I have a
Yeah.
solution
Yeah.
that might work. Let's keep council comments at the very, very end, but maybe at the very beginning. No, I don't know what this means.
1 or 3 minutes.
I don't
or
know.
so.
Yeah, that's not what I was gonna say. At the very beginning, we could say, we want to let the community know of some upcoming dates. Because that's, council announcements. And just say, there's the River Fest on this day, and there's this on this day. And it'll be like one-liners. And then at the very end, if we want to pontificate about something, we do it during council comments. How does that align with what you're hoping?
sounds like we're doubling up our duties.
We might just double the time.
I liked it. I think that if we want the community to know what's going on versus get into things that we bring up all the time. I think that's actually not a bad solution. I would say if we do that, my friendly amendment would be, let's submit them in advance and have, it can be any of us, just say, hey, crowd, here's what we got going on. Just boom, 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 go through it. Like, I am great with doing that to inform.
Advance, I'm sorry.
Huh?
Give me an advance.
Like,
I mean, submit it if you have something from River Commission of a date, if you have something from a Parks and Rec Commission, the Arts Commission, here's something that's going on. Submit them to staff, they'll compile them, somebody will get a readout and they will just sit up here and read it to the audience of people looking in the audience here. It shouldn't be more than a couple minutes. It maintains the discipline and then we're still able to do council comments. I like it.
I feel like I've limited myself because I gave an example and it feels like there have been times in the past where we've had other things that we thought were important to the community. And again, we get back to that if it comes at this point in time. If on a vote that people decide they want to leave council comments at the end, I'm not going to fight it, but I think it's a good thing that we have a choice on, do we want it at the beginning or at the end?
We'll just take it.
Motion to adjourn.
I have one thing.
Yeah.
Just raise their hands. Who wants getting one?
Yeah, can we just do that? Can we just do a quick?
easy.
So are we, just to be clear, are we going with Ingrid's idea or are we just saying council comments beginning or end? Would you want?
Or leave it alone.
And
Which
just
is,
leave it at the end.
oh, okay. So let me ask that. Who wants to leave it as it currently exists at the end of the evening? Okay. Who wants to move council comments? Well, let's do council announcements, the hybrid
Hybrid.
to the beginning and still maintain council comments at the end. There we
Yeah,
go.
let's do
There's
that.
majority.
Yeah, and I had an idea.
But it's 5.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I like it. I
Well,
like
well,
how that went down. That was great.
She made it. Yeah.
Remember that.
Totally. What the-
She's winning everything.
No, totally.
Who? Oh, yeah. Do you have a comment?
I do.
Okay, I think Shelley's next.
That's fine.
Can we put those on the consent? agenda right now? The next agenda? The work. Thank you.
Okay,
You
this
know what
is-
I mean, Marco? Like that.
This is just a comment or a question for Steve and Terry. We talked about at the last budget hearing about the parking management and having some numbers and bringing that back. We got a kind of outline of the work sessions coming up. I don't know if you're intending that to be a work session or if it's just going to go on the agenda, but just a reminder if we can get that scheduled for, I don't know, January or sometime. Get that in the budget. Thank you.
Okay. I have been working on it. I think Charlie also has been working on it. We have been contacted by a friend of a gal who owns a parcel in North Glenwood, the Holloway property. It's actually on the historic preservation list. And she wants to donate it, an AVLT. She wants to donate it into perpetuities that it would stay up something, but not get developed and not get changed too much. It is definitely in the works, but I wanted you guys to all know that it's being discussed. I had lunch with David Howder and Linda Holloway about 2 weeks ago. And I'm going to talk to Carl about it. Bill Kite, Charlie Willman's been involved. I just want you guys to know that sometimes I feel like we can do a better job of letting each other know our little pet projects on the sides. That's happening. And at some point I anticipate that it'll be either an agenda item or work session or something along those lines.
Great.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure.
Nice.
Anybody else? That brings up something. Thanks. That's a tickler for me. I have applied for the EPA Regional Advisory Board position for the Rocky Mountains. So
Is that the environmental protection? Agency?
it is.
Just checking.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Could be something else.
It could be, and I'm trying to do better, Brianna, about not using acronyms. So thank you. And anyway, I don't know, it's a pretty competitive process, but I got a lot of letters of support from folks. So thank you for.
Did you talk to our congressperson too about that, or senator?
No, I didn't. I did speak to other people at
Yeah.
different levels. I don't-
Who decides, the EPA board?
They do.
Okay.
It's EPA Regional Director Advisory Board. So it's yeah, they get to advise on EPA matters and it does not say, no, it's.
Sorry, afterthought.
Yeah, yeah.
Comment. Just real quick, want to say thank you to the people that came out last night to listen to Ingrid and I. Not listen so much, but answer questions. We answered a bunch of questions, whatever we knew and what we didn't know. Brianna was there for us with phenomenal knowledge of whatever was going on. And I think the three of us nailed it. And again, thank you to the public for coming out up to the golf course. It was a great event. It was my first event. I hope we can repeat it soon. So thank you.
I would actually encourage you all to get on the calendar for those because we got a lot of great feedback that the community enjoyed it. It's an opportunity for us to talk to our constituents when there's not some weighty application in front of them.
Can we do CMC at Blake? Maybe Charlie or Shelley can join me. That'll hit that side of town.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Set one up for CMC at Blake. Something like that.
Do we have a dual poll out?
Can we do one in Paris? Because I'm free for
Yeah.
that one.
Brianna, do we have a calendar or dual poll out for that?
We don't currently have a calendar out there, but I think we're aiming for quarterly. So it sounds like the next volunteers I have are Paula and Shelley, and we'll get that set up at CMC. Let's say February.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Any other council comments? Hold on a sec. City attorney, acting city staff, manager, excuse me.
Two quick things just for the public's benefit, one for the public, one for you guys. That we're hoping that we can announce some finalists next week. So be looking for that. And I just wanted to note it is 8:07. Thank you.
It might be 9:07 if we had council comments at the beginning.
Carl likes council comments.
Hey, I thought we'd give your Wilder break one time.
Motion. Did we do a motion
Is there a motion to adjourn?
to adjourn?
Is there a motion moved second and all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously with Councilman Hershey abstaining.